It's the weekend, and if it's the weekend, yes, it must be Michael Snyder, much like the specter of Halloween. Hello, Michael. How are you?
I'm good, Alex, and I am in the Bay Area Halloween town, which I like to do in October. I like to be up here instead of in Los Angeles, because this town knows how to do things with an orange and black tint.
Mm-hmm.
Giants are in the World Series. That's their team colors, the orange and the black. And, of course, everywhere you turn, it's Halloween here. Going to probably hit a few things, some kind of goth party at the Elbow Room on Tuesday, and then the usual hysteria. But speaking of hysteria, we've started to get a few films that smack of Oscar contention, and we're also getting a few of the usual money grabs. Let's call them that. So we should get to movies. And the big release this week, and one that's getting a very, very enthusiastic buzz in some quarters, is John Wick, which is a new Keanu Reeves film, an action movie. And he hasn't really done all that much in the past 10 years or so. Not a lot of stuff. And frankly, everyone questions his acting skill. I mean, when Channing Tatum looks like Laurence Olivier next to you, you know, maybe you're a little thespian challenged, but putting him in an action movie doesn't seem to hurt its prospects. And in the case of John Wick, he plays a retired hitman for the Russian mob who finds himself pulled back in again when something awful happens in his life. And what happens that's awful in his life is not losing his wife, but the aftermath of that, believe it or not. In any case, this is stylish, like super violent nonsense. It's kind of compelling and even funny if you watch it, with more KPM, kills per minute, than I recollect ever seeing in a movie, short of Godzilla crushing a skyscraper and the people in it, below it, etc., with his tail. I mean, people are dying right and left in this thing. I mean, bang, bang, bang. They're all after our hitman, John Wick. Anyway, he's surrounded by really cool actors like Michael Nyqvist. Alfie Allen from Game of Thrones is in this as the scummiest, young, privileged Russian mobster ever. Ian McShane, Willem Dafoe, even Adrian Palicki, who may be known to some right now as Bobby Morse on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and she's pretty cool. But as hitmen movies go, extra ridiculous in its motivation and alliances. There's even like a Hitman Hotel, which I actually kind of liked. It disappears from your memory and consciousness like seconds after you leave the theater. And when I saw it, it was shown in IMAX for no particular reason, except maybe IMAX tickets cost more. Anyway, some people are going to like it. It was as over the top as you could ever imagine. John Wick, piffle, but sort of fun. Whitebird in a Blizzard is a new film by Greg Araki, who did Mysterious Skin, Nowhere and Splendor, among his better movies. He's kind of known for these youth-oriented films featuring ambisexual, sullen young Southern California residents. This all started to happen for him in the 90s, but apparently he really misses the 1980s. So he's subjecting us to them in Whitebird in the Blizzard, which is about an angsty suburban teen babe dealing with her wayward mom, who is, by the way, played by the awesome Ava Green of Penny Dreadful and Casino Royale, etc. And the girl is played by Shailene Woodley, and she's wonderful. Christopher Maloney is her father. Home life has always been strained by this marriage that was once loving but seems to be kind of in decay. And then mom disappears just as the girl falls for an alienated pretty boy who would rather play video games than have sex. I mean, this is sort of soapy. It reminded me a little like borderline Douglas Sirk, despite the director's usual 80s new wave love. Other support in the cast from Thomas Jane and Gabourey Sidibe, Angela. I mean, good actors. Angela Bassett. Cheryl Lee from Twin Peaks makes an appearance. She's a little older. I think she plays the boy's mom, and that's a little disconcerting. Araki's really talented, but this was not one of his better films. Had its moments, but Whitebird in a Blizzard paled next to Mysterious Skin. Let's put it that way. Okay, Stonehurst Asylum. I was ready for this. Silly goth hysteria about a really kind of grisly, awful asylum during Edwardian days in the distant reaches of the UK hinterlands. So quite literally, there's hysteria afoot here. A woman suffering from it, who is the linchpin of the film, she's played by Kate Beckinsale. Anyway, in this adaptation of an Edgar Allan Poe story, a young scholastic fellow arrives at this big old stone asylum in the boonies on Christmas Eve to study psychiatric medicine. And the head of the asylum is played by Ben Kingsley here. And needless to say, things start getting a little hinky with Kingsley and David Thewlis, Jim Sturgis playing the young fellow, Michael Caine, Beckinsale, and all these actors in bit parts as full-on loonies. There's a lot of scenery chewing, but that's kind of cool because there's a lot of scenery. Is this a great film? No. It's like a wacky B movie with a lot of sort of Downton Abbey touches because the elegance and the era. It's directed by a guy named Brad Anderson. I'm not saying it's a good film. I'm just saying I was really entertained by it. Okay, here's a great film. The Tale of Princess Kaguya. There have been all these rumors about Studio Ghibli, the famous Japanese animation house, closing its doors, and this film or that film is the last by the founder, the genius Hayao Miyazaki. But I don't care about that stuff when they put out an exquisite new film like this one. This comes from the studio's co-founder, Isao Takahata. He's the guy who directed maybe the saddest animated film of all time, Grave of the Fireflies, and at the same time also did Pompoko, the Raccoon War, which is about these magical raccoons with big magical balls. Anyway, this is based on a beloved, venerable Japanese folktale about an elderly bamboo cutter who finds a tiny baby girl in a bamboo stalk. With his wife, he raises this little nubbin, and she quickly grows into a beautiful young woman with magnetic appeal and a secret that casts a pall on her. And there are dark, tragic elements and an unexpected twist in the story that make the movie even more singular. It's got to be one of the most unique looking efforts I've ever seen from Ghibli. As usual, very 2D and line drawn, but the bold line makes the film look like a cross between a woodcut illustration and an elegant, soothing watercolor, only animated. And it's kind of apt considering the story concerns the bamboo cutter. And Miyazaki tried this kind of sketchy style on his second to last film, Ponyo, and this is far more impressive and far more lovely. Miyazaki's previous film, which is, they say is his last, The Wind Rises, was fantastic. And but if the studio can continue to produce films as magnificent as this movie, I'm saying it never shut down. Like Spirited Away, this is for kids of all ages, but it's a little long for the littlest kids, more than 2 hours. And full disclosure, I only saw the Japanese language version with English subs, but man, it was a knockout. With Book of Life and the Box Trolls, this is a candidate for Best Feature Cartoon of the Year. The American voice actors are James Caan as the bamboo cutter, Mary Steenburgen as his wife, and Chloe Moretz as the young princess. And a really beautiful, Alex. I recommend it if you get a chance to see the Tale of the Princess Kaguya. And it's a mouthful, but I totally dug it. I also wanted to quickly mention Revenge of the Green Dragons, which is kind of a disappointment. It's a Chinese gangster film set in New York in the 1980s, and it's a disappointment because the co-director is Andrew Lau, who directed Infernal Affairs, which was the Hong Kong inspiration for Martin Scorsese's The Departed, about the triads originally and transposed to Boston by Scorsese. And Scorsese tries to do Lau a solid by shepherding and endorsing this first effort set in the U.S. from the director, Queensboro, Chinatown, 1980s. I think Lau's co-director, Andrew Liu, who co-wrote this thing, is the problem here. It just gets dull after a while. There's this whole thing about immigrants trying to make it in America. What's the easiest way? Try crime. It worked for the Italians and the Irish, and here are the Chinese. Anyway, Ray Liotta of Scorsese's Goodfellas is on board as an FBI agent and a kind of a bigot pursuing the gangs. And it's actually a true story based on a New Yorker article about the Asian American gangs who did a lot of racketeering and human trafficking and heroin in the 80s and 90s. But it just got dull, which is a sad situation. All right, let's wrap. Glenn Campbell, I'll Be Me, a very heartbreaking and inspiring and sad and sweet documentary about Glenn Campbell's battle with Alzheimer's disease. The famous country pop singer-songwriter has had a number of wives, and his current wife and their musical kids take him on a farewell concert tour a couple of years ago as the Alzheimer's begins to take its toll. And amazingly, him playing the music frequently lifts the fog, And that lilting voice and articulate, nimble, like signature guitar playing seems just right. But soon the tour becomes a crapshoot. They got cameras following them in and out of the shows, during the shows, at home. The tour goes on, and backstage, the family tries to hold it all together. And the kids, especially his daughter, are genuinely accomplished musicians, which is kind of sweet. And you're reminded of Campbell's amazing talent. And it shows his eroding skills in action. You see old clips from way back in the Smothers Brothers days and the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour. And in a lot of ways, it's an activist effort determined to bring attention to the disease and lobby for more research. But you can also argue that it's kind of exploitive as one of those like horrific reality TV shows about addiction or family tragedy. But, you know, it's kind of also a tribute to a guy whose life and talents are ebbing away and a guy whose music I loved. And it's kind of a call to arms. And one thing's for sure, man, but Campbell was making great recordings as recently as a couple years ago, and he's not going to do it again. And that's kind of the stuff of tragedy. The director of this thing does a great job. It's James Keach, and I think it's worth seeking out. Glenn Campbell, I'll Be Me. What's up with you? What are you watching on TV?
Nothing.
Nada?
Nada. Nothing going on. No. You didn't get to see Citizen 4, did you?
Not as yet. I'm going to try to see it this weekend.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a scramble around here lately. I don't see things as easily in San Francisco as I do in Los Angeles. There are more opportunities down in L.A.
Yeah. It was supposed to be sensational.
I'm going to try to catch up to it, so when we talk next, we'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, the recommendations here are the Studio Ghibli film and the Glenn Campbell movie. When you see, like, Bruce Springsteen, Clinton, McCartney, Jay Leno, all these people testifying for this guy. Oh, a little clip of Steve Martin. You know, it's
but you know, this is something that can wait for TV. It'll be on Netflix in a couple of months. You know.
No question about that. I'm not saying you should necessarily go to the theaters to see it, but I do think people should see it.
Okay.
Cool.
Tell them where they can find you.
You can follow me on Twitter at Culture Blaster, one word. And go to Michael Snyder's Culture Blast page on Facebook, like it, and you can link up to this program and other stuff that I spew out on a regular basis. We'll be back next week with more fun. Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween to you, too.